Hi, welcome to episode 63, the Austin Downbeat. I'm Kat, your host. Thank you so much for watching. Let's hit the rundown because we have a wonderful show for you again today. This covers July 25th through the 31st, and here we go. At Antone's, you have X on the 25th. Also, Kelly McWee is at Continental Club. On the 26th, Brian Wolf is at the Pitch, and James Hearn is at New World Deli. On the 27th, Nick Parr and those selfless lovers, they're so good. They're playing at Zilker Botanical Garden. Love and Chaos is at Green Hall. Evan Charles, who's my guest today, is at the White Horse. He has a lot of shows coming up, so be sure to watch out for that. And then my pal Embers, he's at Kingdom Nightclub. Be sure to check that out. On the 28th, you have Kalu and the Electric Joint, Daniel Fears, and Being Dead, all at Still Austin Whiskey. On the 29th, you have Heartburn at Valente Beach Water Park. Also on the 29th, Ruthie Kraft is at Banger's Sausage House. If you haven't heard her latest single, 19, listen to it. It will be stuck in your head just as much as it is in mine. It's so catchy. Also on the 29th, Restos is at Central Machine Works, and Die Spitz is at Hotel Vegas. On the 30th, David Shabani is at Pershing Hall, and Scott Collins is at 24 Diner. Rounding out the week on Monday for the residencies, Monday Night Supper Club is at El Mercado South. Bob Schneider is at Saxon Pub doing Lonely Land. And Dale Watson is at Continental Club. That does it for the rundown. My guest today is Evan Charles. And Evan is really fun to talk to, super deep and philosophical and articulate, and such a great songwriter. And I think this new album is going to really show the depths of that. This is his debut solo album. So he's super excited and he's worked really, really hard on it. And I'm really excited. It's called Between Two Worlds. It's on Jonas Wilson's label, sorry, Mr. Pink Records. Anyway, that comes out on August 3rd. We talk all about the process of doing that album, the difference between pushing out an album with a band and pushing out an album by yourself. Although he did and does name all the wonderful people that helped him do that. Anyway, I'm going to let you listen to our conversation. Without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Evan Charles.
Okay.
All right, serious face. It is time. I'm so happy to welcome you to the show, Evan Charles. I've been looking forward to this, and we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here in my room.
In your
Talking
blue
to you,
in
though.
your blue room.
Yes.
I'm loving that room. It seems really cozy. Is that Bob Dylan behind you?
Yeah. My mother-in-law, as a joke, got me this cutout Bob Dylan because for her birthday, which we went, she lives near Tucson. We went to surprise her, and she had a cutout Paul McCartney from the Beatles. So she's like, I know what to get Evan. He loved my Paul cutout. Let's get him Bob. And so I I thought I'd just rotate him around for this interview, just
Yeah, I'm
over
digging
my
him, but
shoulder.
yeah, it's like Bob's watching. I mean, it would be in true form. The man is on the never-ending tour. I mean, he's just never ending, so it makes sense that he would like maybe be in someone's room.
Oh yeah, he's definitely cast a wide shadow, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're here. And we were talking a little bit before we hit record. This is the perfect time for you to come on because not only do you have new music out, but it is it's your debut solo album.
Yeah,
So let's
right.
talk. I mean, I was thinking about you today. I do a lot of my thinking and kind of prep while I'm driving
Hmm.
because I really get to just relax my brain. And I was like, how does that what is the difference emotionally when you're putting out, because I don't know if your other project, Altamesa, is still active, but this is the first time you're solo, so you've definitely put out music with a band.
Hmm.
But what's the emotional difference of doing now solo for you?
Uh, it's I think the level of you know, the entire thing rides on how I am gonna envision it and how I'm going to execute it.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of liberation to that, but there's also kind of like this manic. It takes like this. I mean, I definitely got like really focused, like kind of just like dead set, hell bent. Like, how do I pull this off when I'm not bouncing off of somebody? Which
Yeah.
I tried to do. That's what I thought I was doing with Alta Mesa whenever I kind of gave the project that moniker in 2015, 2016. But when my friend Sean Ferris, who was in the Happenings and a band called the Dead Ringers before that, when he kind of wanted to start having more input, I can't I can't shut a guy down like that because he's so he knows, he has great ideas and he's really talented and has
Hmm.
a vision of his own, and it's complementary and additive instead of clashy.
Hmm.
So but I just got to this point where we were doing something else with Alta Mesa, which will come out next year. That's a little more kitschy. It's a little more tongue in cheek. It's a little more written to character.
Hmm.
It's more fun and more rock and roll in a way.
Hmm.
So to get to your question, what's the emotional difference between this and a band? This was a way to remain in touch with my um excavating my emotions and my observations and thoughts about things inside of myself and amongst close friends in a way that Alta Mesa was kind of turning away from a little bit as we kind of went into more of just like a little bit more of a bop your head punk
Hmm.
rock kind of vibe. So
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with both. Question, have you always been one that could really go deep in the excavation of your emotions? Has that always been a strength of yours? Or and then not only to be able to go there, but then to articulate it in a way of in the output. I mean, that's a real talent. But has that always been something that was like a gift for you?
um I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a gift. It's where I've always it's definitely where I've come from the start in terms of my writing.
Hmm.
And if anything, I've tried to learn over the years to um, universalize that a
Hmm.
little more and broaden out and sort of just make sure that whatever I'm kind of reaching in and pulling out is done in such a way that it's um, hopefully somebody else who I can't, I try and just stop and think about someone completely different, somewhere completely different, hearing
Hmm.
that and trying to find some kind of universality to it before I put the finishing stamp on it, so to speak. So that's definitely where I've always come from, and it's more of an unnatural but still fun and fulfilling exercise to do the totally uh removed third person narrative story. And of course things about yourself always creep into those as well.
Sure.
But that's kind of my basic operating mode as a writer from the start. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your relationship with yourself and just trusting that gut and that instinct? Do you have a healthy relationship with that? I think as a writer, um, you're delving in really vulnerable waters sometimes. And what's been that arc of just really trusting what ends up on the page?
I think when I'm writing, I I do because I don't I don't write. I can't write unless I kind of get to this sort of focused, honed in, emotionally calm place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say I necessarily trust. I don't necessarily trust my emotions in like my day to day or whatever, because I do feel like these are things that flow through us,
Sure.
and eventually fizzle out, and there are always moments where you're going to be clearer than others.
Mhm.
But when I sit down to write, for sure, it's
Mhm.
always been looking at a situation, maybe just kind of society, or maybe it's a relationship with a friend of mine, or maybe it's like an ex relationship or whatever.
Mhm.
But trying to be as generous with um just as generous with kind of whatever I'm interacting with, or musing off of, or bouncing off of,
Mhm.
as I can, and taking it from that starting point, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. I love to write, and I think that it's so fun to slip into that mindset. What do you do for yourself to set yourself up? I know for me, I struggle sometimes with like busyness in here, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
How do you how do you how do you get quiet and get focused? Is it like paint the walls? Do you actually is it this room, or do you shut the door and kind of just have time, or when does it come to you where you kind of get that flow state, I guess is what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just music. I like, if I'm tinkering on my guitar or my piano right here, or
Mhm.
my synth, or whatever. If I stumble onto sort of the sonic foundation of what something I can build off of,
Yeah.
that is basically the only, I mean, ever since I was like in school or whatever, but like in my adult life, that's kind of like the main thing that like focuses my
Mhm.
mind, because music, um even just like one instrument, and you can kind of hear it in your head from there a little bit. Music
Mhm.
is It's a world that you can step into and inhabit, and um that makes it a lot easier to block out outside considerations, as long as life is not pounding on the door. Obviously you have to have time.
Right.
um you have to have time where that's just like, I can dedicate to this. But it's an interesting question. I never thought about how I access the flow state, but it is very clear to me, talking about it now, that it's music. It's a progression, it's a rhythm, it's a
Like a little
melody.
nugget, like a
It's that
little
little opening. It's like Leonard Cohen said, there's a
uh,
crack in everything. That's how the
yeah.
light gets in. And
Love
there's always a crack in a little piece of music that sets me on the trail, and
mhm.
that's how I get to focusing.
I love that. Let's talk about this record, Between Two Worlds. What does that mean for you, Between Two Worlds?
It's just kind of a reference to, I guess, being in transition. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's all it's which is maybe a little broad of a statement, because everything's always changing all the time. That's the nature of the flow of the world, and ourselves. But the way that I didn't have that in mind when I started the record. I actually thought I was going to give it the title track of a song that I ended up cutting,
Oh,
um, which is like kind of blew my mind in the 11th hour.
I
But
love that stuff.
the framing, um, was the framing. It all made sense. It all fell into place once I kind of got to that. So the last, the chorus on the last song's called Horizon Line, and I took the lines from the chorus. I'm caught between two worlds more than I realized, and
Mhm.
it's it's about whatever kind of gulfs exist, you know, in our experience and our self-conception. I mean, feeling young and naive, but feeling old and wise alternatingly at the same time,
Mm,
living in the present and living in the past or the future alternatingly. I mean, the way the record is structured, it's um, it's there's kind of like the opening bell that starts the whole record, and then we're in motion throughout the entire album, and then by the last song, there's kind of this. Well, it's really the last two songs, but we could go into that, I guess. But the last song is kind of like maybe a lot of time has passed, definitely physically in a different place.
mm,
Maybe it's not even literally the same person.
mm.
Um, um, anyway, yeah, it's just like getting from point A to point B, and then realizing that just flips over on itself, and we're always kind of in between whatever's going on with us. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's always that duality, and I have kids, and I remember when one of them was really little, um, he had a skinned knee, and I was tucking him in, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, do you want a Band-Aid for that while you sleep?" And and he sat up in his bed, and he was like, "I'm having two feelings at the same time."
Yeah, right. Who
Right?
hasn't? Who hasn't? Exactly.
Right. And so that was the first time I actually knew I learned that there was a name for that. It's called an integrated feeling. It's when
Oh,
you're
okay.
happy, sad, or, like you're holding two things at once. And that never left me. Obviously, I'm bringing it up now, but I always loved that. And I saw such beauty in that, obviously, in a child, right? Of
Of
just
course.
holding those two things and being so open and honest about it. So I love that concept of what this is for you. And I love the idea that you're in that state and really eyes wide open in that. I think it's really cool,
Uh,
to be so
Thanks.
aware.
Yeah.
There's never, I mean, I think we're trained to have destinations, but even a mid space is, I mean, this moment that we're having right now is the destination for this moment,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
that's so cool to think that. So I like that you sort of encapsulated that in a whole album.
Well, and trying to, I think it can be dangerous to get tunnel vision about any one thing or another,
Mm,
and trying to keep a wide scope of what our lives are, and
right.
just the sort of the basically incomprehensible complexity, um that we are always inhabiting. I mean, we have these little imaginary boundaries that we live within, and we do to an extent exist on our tracks in much of our lives, or many, different chapters of our lives maybe,
Mhm.
but there is always uh an infinite potential, sh- shooting off of that sliding doors moments every
Yeah.
every day, and just acknowledging that this is sort of but one quantum possibility, that we're experiencing, um is just, you know on a very basic level, calling a record between two worlds. I mean, two is reductive, but just something to acknowledge. This is a grand symphony of chaos, and we have our little perception of it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot going on.
Yeah. I always say the secret to life is the grace with which we jockey between the idea of how big we are and how small we are in any given moment. Like always using that zoom lens of
Did you
zooming.
make that up?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's perfectly said.
Oh, thank you. Because I think about it every day. I think like, and I think having children and that really kind of even deepens your microscope into the detail of it, but also just picking your head back out and just like going like we are on a spinning ball in the middle of unfathomable universe. Like
Yeah.
none of this actually matters, but at the same time in this moment this is all that matters in this moment, and to be so fully present and generous with your time and with everything that you have is so beautiful, right? It's all that kind of back and forth. And I love that. Like I really try not to miss that during my day, you know?
Yeah,
Obviously
yeah,
I miss
yeah,
it a lot, but you know, I
of
really try
course.
to slip back in, you know, when I can.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we're always I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to get this record out so that I can kind of recalibrate to being, re-engaging with my creative side a little more, because I've been, kind of one man show as far as promotion and booking and setting everything up all the
Yeah.
time. And um very I'm very project oriented. It's like I'll go so deep into the creative space, and particularly with this record, I demoed as deeply as I ever have, which was also really satisfying experience, just musically playing the piano. I got a bass during the pandemic, started putting that on my demos, and I was so deep in the creative space. And then as soon as I had enough songs for a record that I was happy with, it was like immediately the switch flipped to like, all right, how do I pull this off? Which
Yeah.
is a whole different side of your brain,
How
So
did you pull it off? Because this is, you know, I was just talking to a band that came out. My episode came out today, Rival Waves, and they were talking about it. It's like recording is not cheap. It's a big endeavor in so many different ways. I mean, how did you pull this off?
so I was super demoed out, as I said, so I knew if I could get the right people together, um, I could move quickly. And
Mhm.
I okay, well, so at risk of being long-winded, here's
That's
what
okay.
happened.
We
I
got
had
nowhere to
I
be. It's
This
all
is, yeah,
good.
this is what we're here for, I guess. I had all my demos. I had they're all done to metronome and stuff, and I got it all kind of started. The first domino fell when I got a text from my friend Wes Cargill, who plays drums. He plays drums in Harvest Thieves.
Mhm.
He played drums for Not in the Face with Jonathan Terrell, back in the day. He was honing in his home recording setup and asked if I had any demos he could play along to so he could get his sound. And an album's worth of demos, or I had most of them, and I finished the rest off and sent them to him. So
Mhm.
basically every song, um, before we even had a before I even assembled a band to play these songs live, I already was able to hear drums on them and full
Nice.
instrumentation. So that was like maybe the clearest picture in advance I'd ever been able to develop with the help of Wes, before assembling a group. And um and then right around that time as well, I don't know if you know Scott Davis. He's a guitar player and record producer. He currently plays with Bruce Robison and his like Lockhart Bunker studio. What's it called? Next Waltz studio.
Okay.
And he played bass in Band of Heathens before this. He took over the uh, Bonnie Whitmore's little songwriting duo Thursday nights at the Continental Gallery for one night
Mhm.
and asked me to come play. And I played all these songs. And I was like, Scott, I've been thinking about trying to record these. He's like, and I was thinking about you to produce them if I can ever get to that point. And he, immediately we had a, repartee ongoing from there.
Good.
And he sent me some studio quotes. He's kind of tried to bring me into Bruce's thing. That didn't work out. Um, and so basically I kind of like went to a friend who works at Still Austin. They kind of helped me have like a fundraiser
Mhm.
event. I was able to raise enough money to get the band in the studio, and shouts to my friend, my label guy and genius musician Jonas Wilson,
Wilson, yeah.
Mr. Pink Records. One of the great perks about being one of his artists on Mr. Pink Records is doable studio rates and doable mixing and mastering rates.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically all of that led up to I just got 4 days in the studio.
Hmm.
We did everything on the floor. Well, we did everything live except we overdubbed percussion, steel, and some like double tracked vocals and harmonies and that.
Yeah.
So we were able to work really fast.
That's
And
awesome.
that's how. And then I saved up some more money for a few months, and Jonas mixed it, and yeah, that was it.
I love that. So it really does have that kind of live feel most for
Yeah,
the most part. Yeah.
yeah, that was. Oh yeah, no, I mean all the vocals, all the drums, bass, electric guitar, and vocals and acoustic guitar are all live. Some of them, for one day, I had John Calvin Abney on the piano, so
Hmm.
I just kind of he was supposed to be there the whole time, but he got whisked away to go open for Hanson. So
Well,
I can't begrudge him that. So I picked the four. I was like, okay, these are your four, John, and the rest, Jonas overdubbed piano on one. I overdubbed piano on some of them.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, mostly we were able to work off of the floor, and which is something that I've always wanted to do.
Hmm.
And um, I don't know. I prefer to not have this recording process just drag on and on and on. It's a headache. It's too much. It bogs me down, like just thinking about just carrying that around.
Yeah. And don't you think too, like, two things. One, I think doing it on the floor, you get a really nice fingerprint that kind of overlays over all of it that's like capturing a moment in time
Yeah.
and if you're cool with that, I mean, I think that's the cooler way to do it. And then two, if you don't I would imagine it'd be easy to kind of overthink things a little bit, and so
Yeah.
just get
Yeah.
it done and do it and feel it and let it just be that, you know
Well, I mean, like I'm really excited about like the Altamesa stuff that's coming out next year, and we're pretty close to sort of the first batch. But we did go in and just do like one theremin sound. Like it's like it's kind of like gotten to that point where we're just tinkering, and
Yeah.
like it's like, oh my God, we're so close. Let's just like we probably should like maybe
Just
just like let it sit.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was kind of a reaction to being in this sort of eternal overdub situation with all the Alta Mesa stuff, because we recorded like we used some Black Fret money from years past to like rent a house and go out for a week, and we recorded like 20 songs like in incomplete form. So they all needed overdubs.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, how do I group these? How do we make sure we get together? It just became sort of a logistical head spinner.
Hmm.
So this was like simple, in the moment, like you said, snapshots,
Yeah.
and just like I think I also was like, man, if I can't pull these off on the floor in the moment, then I need to I kind of needed to prove to myself that I'm like was like that guy or whatever,
Yeah.
that I could deliver a song live, get it down in a few takes, um, and everyone else in the studio was absolutely professional grade,
Yeah.
and so everyone just like locked in and got that moment, and that's exactly what it came out exactly as I hoped, really, but
That's awesome. That's really congratulations for going through that. I think a lot of people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes to do that, and it's quite the whirlwind and accomplishment. And
it's a
for you to
lift,
do
yeah.
that, yeah, and for you to do that not on your own, because obviously you had a really nice team around you of people, but for you to be at the helm, I think has to feel good, huh?
Yeah, yeah. uh I'm really satisfied with what we pulled off, for sure. And I'm it's like you said, as much as it's like, yes, I was sort of at the wheel for all of this, and I also completely do not take for granted all the different all the collective effort of pulling this off. I already mentioned Wes Cargill on the drums and coming to me early, Scott Davis on guitar producing and playing guitar, and John I just met one night, and he just, such a nice guy. Have you met him before?
John who?
John Calvin Abney.
Mm-mm.
He's awesome. He's like hands down one of the best musicians I've ever seen
I
on
love that.
piano, guitar. I mean, he's an absolute monster and just a super sweet guy.
Oh, I love
And
that.
Jesse Ebaugh from the Tender Things, he I initially just got him to play steel, and he was like, like, I'm like a pretty good bass player too. Like I could play bass. And it turns out he's like an awesome bass player. And that's why the pockets on the record are just like so they're tight, but they're big and
I love
pillowy
that.
too.
Mm.
So yeah, it's just being able to be, and of course Jonas with the studio and supporting me through the years as a, I mean, he basically started Mr. Pink Records because Altamesa couldn't get anyone to bite on our last record. So he's like, you know what, next time y'all do this, I'm just gonna be the one.
I love
Um,
that.
so yeah, I mean, it and even back to Katie Crenshaw at Still Austin Whiskey helping me kind of have my fundraising event. I mean, just
Yeah.
it's so important to have like great partners and and support each other and
Yeah.
acknowledge.
This, yeah, and this community is really, it's one of the things that keeps showing up every conversation I get to have with you guys. Like the music community here is so delicious and so loving and so supportive. Everyone just seems like it just feels really, really tight. And I love being at events where a lot of you know, the beloveds, as I call them, are there, and it's such a wonderful feeling. Obviously, I mean, obviously, I'm guessing you feel that. Sounds like you are, woven into that. Are you from Austin, or where did you grow up?
Yes, I am from Austin. Yeah.
What? That's awesome. So, I mean, did you always kind of want to be a musician, or kind of walk me through the path that you took when you sort of were like, "Oh, I can do this. I want to do
Uh,
this."
I started playing guitar when I was 14, and I had played clarinet in middle school, kind of leading up to that. And yeah, that was also a time when my uncle, who was like my like guitar guy uncle, lived with us for a few years. And
Mhm.
and
You know
so,
that uncle.
oh, for sure. I mean, like it's kind of a trope. It's like it's kind of funny that it's like a cliche, but yeah, that was yeah, he was around playing guitar, and I my, it's funny, like my dad had bought like a cheap acoustic guitar to try and learn, but just his hands were like too big for it or something, and so it just was sitting there. And um yeah, I just started strumming around and learning songs, and eventually, kind of right around the time I was getting got into like the Beatles and the White Stripes and Dylan and all this guitar music. And when I was learning all of that, it was like early aughts, I guess is what we would call it. And so like guitar music was like in the culture,
Yeah.
because it was like um, White Stripes, Strokes, Kings of Leon, yeah, yeah, yeahs.
Yeah.
So that was like what it was like. It was like a cool, like it was like a viable, cool thing to like have like a guitar based rock and roll band or whatever, because we were all kind of into that,
Hmm.
and we were sort of riding that wave in the larger culture. So
Hmm.
yeah, me and one of my best friends had been one of my best friends since we were kids, like 8 years old. He started playing bass, and he was going to school with a guy who played drums, who already played drums in his dad's like restaurant cover band when he was like 14, and he was like an awesome drummer. His name's Aaron Lemke. He like could play like John Bonham beats as a teenager.
Wow.
I'm like not kidding. Like I
Wow.
one time, this story is kind of, I don't know, I've told it before. I don't know if I've ever told it in public before, but we like had the Led Zeppelin DVD on in the background or whatever, and he had like a basement setup that his dad's band practiced in or whatever. There's a little TV, and we muted the Zeppelin DVD, and I'm seeing Bonham do the Moby Dick drum solo between takes, and then I just start hearing the exact movements come out of the drum kit. I was like, what? How is that possible?
Wow.
So I was pretty lucky to, from a teenage age, like fall into a situation where we just got together every Sunday and just jammed, and eventually started writing, and then eventually started playing shows after a couple years of just, it was really a blessing to have a weekly Sunday every week, like clockwork,
Hmm.
um, standing practice for no other reason than to just do it, because we didn't have any gigs or anything. So
What
yeah,
did
that's
it
what started me writing songs.
what did it feel like that first time you played a show? Do you remember? I mean, obviously you were probably nervous after.
Yeah, I do remember. It was because it was funny because we only played like, so the cover band, the dad cover band was called the Blue Healers, and they had a standing gig at El Arroyo. And once Kurt, Aaron's dad, once he decided that we were ready for the big time, he let us have like maybe a, like the last couple songs or some last 10 minutes or something before like one of their intermissions. And it was like these people like trying to have dinner, like wondering why we were, what is going on. And
Love it.
it wouldn't, it didn't sound like too bad. I mean, it didn't sound great, but it was mostly just like contextually like so random for,
Yeah.
like people eating dinner on the patio. So yeah, that was the first one.
Do you remember how you felt? Did it flush out kind of a lot of the buildup of nerves? And then were you kind of like, I'm ready for our next one or like a real gig or
I will say the next thing that we did was like a school talent show type of deal.
oh, cool.
And I felt definitely way more like locked in and less nervous with
Yeah.
that. But then again, I mean, that's like, that situation was like supposed to occur. It was
Mhm.
like we were actually supposed to be there as opposed to being
As
at
opposed
El
to El
Arroyo.
Arroyo.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much.
Yeah.
I feel like I spent a lot of time, because I mean we were in the basement for like 2 years
It's a long
uh
time.
before we ever played out. So I felt like I we were pretty like, I don't know,
Comfortable.
confident and comfortable by the time we
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the details for folks. Your new album comes out August 3rd. And are you doing any kind of like release show or what's the follow up to that so people can, I mean, obviously they
Totally.
can stream
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
Yeah. So on August 3rd, I'm at Antone's. I'm opening for William Beckman, because I have some friends who play in his band, and seemed like a good musical fit.
Yeah.
So I'll be opening that show at 8, and that's Thursday, August 3rd, and then Friday, August 4th, I'll be at Waterloo Records
Nice.
at 5 for an in-store there. And I have we probably all at this point have at least a handful of friends who have like moved out of town, and a lot of my friends have moved to Lockhart.
Yeah.
And so just as kind of like a fun punctuation, I'm doing a Saturday, August 5th show in Lockhart at Arts and Craft Bar, with
Nice.
my friends JD Clark and Ryan Quiet. So I've got kind of that threefer, and those are all,
Yeah.
in or adjacent to town, and
Yeah.
it's
I
some out of
like
town
that.
stuff too.
I like that. And then are you going to slowly kind of, are you releasing the whole thing and then you're going to kind of single it out or what's
Um,
your strategy?
I started putting out singles like in March, and so
Hmm.
this will just be like Here It All Is.
Okay, because I think there's three out right now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't know. Some people do more.
I don't
I'm
think there's
like,
any right
I'm
way
not
to do
patient
it.
enough. I'm just not. I mean,
Just take it.
I'm just not patient enough. I mean, that was part of the whole reason I did this is because I was like getting so impatient with all the other stuff we were working on. It was just like, you know what? I'll bet I can do this pretty quickly. And even putting this record out like a year after I tracked it seems like I'm already kind of like ready to you know go back and finish some Altamesa stuff or just like write a few new songs or whatever. And maybe that's just uh, a factor of like getting a little burned out with the whole sort of administrative uh, lift that this is or whatever. Um, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, I think the best you can hope for is like the soonest is probably to get a record out like within a year or close to it after you've made a record. It's like so, but I'm already ready to try other
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's so nice to get a chance to talk to you. And I'm so excited for this leg of your journey and seeing kind of where you go from here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for like listening to it and giving me a shot.
Yeah, of course, of course. I'm super excited for you. Is it a ticketed situation at Antone's for people on the 3rd? Do they need to go to
Yes.
antones.com and get
Yeah.
tickets?
I
Okay.
think it's antonsnightclub.com,
Antone's
I
nightclub.
believe. If not
Perfect.
.net. Yeah, one of
Okay.
those.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to try to come see you at some, because I know you have a busy August. I know those aren't the only three things that you have going on. I think you have quite a busy August, in fact. So hopefully I can catch you after one of those gigs.
Yeah, who knows what'll happen after that. I'm living for August and then we'll see where everything falls. Yeah.
Hopefully all of your gigs are going to be indoors because it is not cold outside.
It's no couldn't mistake it for cold, no.
No. All right. Well, that does it for another episode of the Austin Downbeat. Thanks to my guest, Evan Charles, for joining. And
Thanks for having me.
of course, it's such a pleasure. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.